How will our economy cope with yet another shock and setback? Also this lunchtime, 7 new cases of meningitis investigated, including a student at a London college, all linked to the Kent outbreak, as more in Kent are told to get the vaccine.
We're keeping that situation under review. We may well expand eligibility for antibiotics and vaccination in the coming days, depending on what we see, and we'll take those decisions in an evidence-informed way.
1 dead, 1 missing. Police are continuing to search for a boy after a car carrying 5 teenagers crashed into the River Nene. And a royal right to roam, King Charles to open the world's longest coastal path. This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain. Good afternoon. The Bank of England has held interest rates at 3.75%. It's the latest sign of the impact the conflict in the Middle East will have on us here. It comes as the price of gas has risen sharply in the UK and Europe following attacks on Qatar's Ras Laffan energy complex. The US President Donald Trump has said the US would massively blow up the entirety of the world's largest gas field in Iran if it attacks Qatar again. It's threats like this that the bank will be taking into account when making decisions about interest rates over the coming months. Our economics editor Joel Hills is at the Bank of England for us this lunchtime. Joel, exactly what did the bank say?
Well, if in doubt, Nina, and let's be clear, the future looks extraordinarily uncertain at the moment, do nothing. And that's exactly what the Bank of England decided to do today. The Monetary Policy Committee, the men and women that set interest rates, voted unanimously to keep the cost of borrowing at 3.75%, warning that the war in the Gulf is causing inflation in the United Kingdom. It's putting upward pressure on prices across the board. Just last month, of course, everyone here in the city had a cut penciled in. The war has changed everything overnight. The price of UK natural gas has risen by 16%. That's the price that Ofgem uses to set the price cap on domestic energy bills. The price of oil on international markets has reached $116 a barrel just before the war. Before the first missile was fired, it was down at $72. And when the price of oil rises, the price of almost everything in an economy tends to rise too. War in the Middle East has pushed up global energy prices, says the Governor of Bank of England. You can already see that at the petrol pump, and if it lasts, it will feed into higher household energy bills later this year. The best way to tackle this, Andrew Bailey says, is at the source by reopening energy supply lines. The energy price shock is underway. The scale is unknowable, which is why the bank has voted to wait and see. We're seeing the ripple effects at the pumps. We're also seeing it in the housing market, of course. Lenders are repricing their loans to reflect their belief that interest rates will now have to be higher for longer.
Well, the rates are naturally increasing off the back of what's been going on in the global political arena. We've seen rates increasing in circa 0.75%, 0.75% over that period. Products are being withdrawn at little to no notice, so consumers and borrowers are having to make prompt decisions to secure rates. But we are monitoring them as best we can.
Who knows where we will be in 6 weeks' time when the Bank of England sits down again to contemplate what to do with interest rates. Prices are rising, though, remember this, not because of strong demand in the economy, but because of a massive supply disruption to flows of oil and gas in the Middle East. That is a crucial distinction and will determine what the bank does next.
Joel Hills there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, as attacks on energy facilities have intensified, ministers for many of the Gulf countries held a meeting late into the night in Saudi Arabia. Our global security editor, Rohit Khatri, was there in Riyadh. Is there a fear, Rohit, that this conflict is now expanding?
Yeah, and expanding significantly. We had this meeting which went on beyond 3 a.m. this morning here in Riyadh, the Saudi Arabian capital. And there we had ministers from all over this region, Gulf countries, but also ministers from Pakistan and Jordan and Syria. And what came from them is really this very clear message that they are running out of patience with Iran. They met late at night, and as they arrived, you know, Iran wasn't invited, but there was a very clear intrusion from them. They launched a wave of ballistic missiles at this city. They knew the time and they knew the location of this meeting, and yet they chose here and then to launch these missiles. And so as officials and ministers were arriving in this building, some of their phones were buzzing with these alerts telling people to stay indoors. It was really not the backdrop to this summit that they were hoping for, and what emerged from it was an incredibly clear message. I was able to speak to the Saudi Arabian foreign minister, his first public comments since the war began, and I put it to him that the clear question of this moment: where is Saudi Arabia's red line? At what point will they decide to move from threatening action towards their own action inside Iran themselves?
It's important for the Iranians to understand that the kingdom, but also its partners who have been attacked and beyond, have very significant capacities and capabilities that they could bring to bear should they choose to do so. And the patience that is being exhibited is not unlimited.
And so I think what we heard there is a real shift in the language of not just Saudi Arabia, but many of the other countries here, who are now speaking in a way which indicates that they are now very seriously considering their own offensive action inside Iran to try and find their own routes, to stop what they're doing, to try to end this huge impact that they're having, not just on civilians in countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, but crucially to those governments on their economies as well.
Rohit Katru, thank you very much. Thank you. 7 more people are suspected to have been infected with meningitis, bringing the total to 27. Today, the Health Secretary has visited a meningitis vaccination centre in Kent as thousands of students receive jabs to protect them against the deadly outbreak, and announced a broadening out of the vaccine scheme in the county. Our health correspondent Rebecca Barry is in Canterbury. Take us through what West Streeting has just announced, Rebecca.
Well, there's still lots of students here queuing up to get their vaccinations. We have been warned by health experts that cases in this outbreak would continue to rise, and this morning we got confirmation of that. The number of cases linked to this outbreak now stands at 27. That's up from 20 yesterday. And as you say, as if to underline the significance of this outbreak, today the Health Secretary visited this vaccination centre. West Streeting came to the sports centre here on the campus of University of Kent, and he met students as they received their vaccinations, giving them some longer-term protection against any future exposure to this deadly disease. But it's important to point out that for immediate protection, anyone who's been exposed should still get antibiotics. The Health Secretary announced that he was expanding this vaccination programme. Previously, it was only available to students living in halls of residence. Now, anyone who attended the nightclub, Club Chemistry, from the 5th of March can also get vaccinated, and anyone who's previously had antibiotics linked to this outbreak can also get the jab. He also said that an extra 20,000 doses will be made available to pharmacies for anyone who wants to pay for them privately, but he reassured the public that the risk for them remains low.
The way in which this infection disease spreads, it is through close personal contact. We've got an effective treatment in the antibiotic. We've got effective vaccination, which is up and running. All of those things taken together mean that the risks, even for students here in Canterbury, are relatively low. And of course, the general public across the country who are also watching events with interest and concern, the risk to the general public is extremely low.
Health officials are telling us that they can't yet confirm that this outbreak has been contained to this area. So far, 4 schools across Kent have confirmed cases, and today we learned that a college in London has also reported a case.
Rebecca Barry, thank you. Well, let's get more details then from Professor Robin May, who is the Chief Scientific Officer at the UK Health Security Agency that is dealing with this outbreak. Professor May, lots to get through. Just for clarification, can you confirm this lunchtime? How many cases linked to Kent are now not in Kent?
So we have in total, as you've just heard, 27 cases, a small number of which have been identified elsewhere. So people will be aware, for example, one of the very early cases was identified in France from a student who returned there. The majority are still within Kent as well, and all of the ones we have identified are linked to that original Kent outbreak, even if they're not present in Kent at the moment.
How concerned should we be right now about the fact that we've got this case in a London college?
So really important to point out that the case in the London College is linked to the original exposure in Kent. So this is one of those cases that still links back to the outbreak itself. So no evidence of second sites unrelated to this outbreak, which is positive at this stage. I think in terms of your wording around it, rather than concern, I would say vigilance is the key word here. It is really important that people remain vigilant, not just in Kent. This is a mobile population of students. Many of them have moved around. Very important, even if you're not in Kent, to be on alert for these symptoms.
Yeah, okay. We know, we've just heard Wes Streeting announce there that the vaccination programme in Kent is to be expanded to those who have already had antibiotics. What about the catch-up campaign? I know that's being investigated, but surely that needs to start as a matter of urgency. The country's young people can't remain this exposed when we know they are more at risk than the likes of us.
So at the moment, as I'm sure you'll understand, our key priority is the people directly affected by this outbreak, hence the Health Secretary's announcement of rolling out vaccines to a wider group of people in that particular area. And that is absolutely right, that is the key focus now. Clearly, we are looking at potential expansions, and as you heard from the Health Secretary, that may come in due course. Really important to stress here, though, that this is a vaccine that protects individuals from severe disease. It does not change the transmission of the disease. If you've been vaccinated, you can still spread bacteria from one to another. So it's a different sort of vaccine in that context to, for example, COVID or flu vaccines, where you are achieving not only to reduce the disease, but also to prevent its spread. This is a different sort of vaccine.
How long does it take to actually manufacture, to make this vaccine? We heard there again, Wes Streeting talk about the fact that more doses will become available soon. But if that demand increases, or if the government decides to roll it out to all teenagers, how long would that physically take?
Yeah, so actually there were quite extensive stockpiles of the vaccine, both in the UK and around the world. And so when people have mentioned briefly about vaccine shortages, those shortages, really important to stress, are not about the supply itself. They're about individual pharmacies, for example, that may have run out. And as you've just heard from the Health Secretary, today we are...
Sorry, there has been reports of wholesale supply problems. Is that not true?
This is private sector. So we're talking about in the private supply sector, individual areas, quite understandably, were not scaled for this kind of level. In terms of the national stockpile that we hold, that is quite substantial, and hence we are now liberating that now.
Okay, and in terms of what we're dealing with right now, how long will it take for scientists to try to work out why this particular outbreak, because we know we have 300 to 400 cases per year normally, why this one has been so intense, so, in the words of the authorities, explosive? How long will that take?
Yeah, as you rightly say, this is a very unusual and very dramatic outbreak. And as you can imagine, we've been working around the clock since the early detection on this. Key things, I think, to establish for us are whether there are particular elements associated with the club or the local environment that have caused the spread to be particularly extensive. Or are there features of this bacterial strain that make it more transmissible? We have been working on the bacterium very intensely over the last few days, and very soon, hopefully, we'll have full DNA genome sequence. That will tell us a lot about the bacteria. Really important to say, it is quite an extensive and complex job to analyse that genome. So we're going to be looking at that over the coming days and weeks, and we will be updating people as soon as we know more about this strain.
Okay, so it could be weeks. Professor May, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope to get to speak to you again soon if this outbreak and concern over it continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still ahead, the third report from the COVID public inquiry is released. The UK's healthcare system coped during the pandemic, but only just. And why the King is opening a coastal path that would take more than a year for you to walk it all. First, searches for a teenage boy are continuing this lunchtime after a car carrying 5 people crashed into the River Nene on Tuesday evening. He has been named by relatives as Declan Berry. The body of a teenage girl was recovered from the river yesterday. The other 3 passengers were taken to hospital with injuries. Our Midlands correspondent Stacey Foster joins me now from Wisbech. Stacey, what more do we know at this stage?
Well, Nina, since we've been here today, the police have still been working on the banks of the River Nene here as part of that search and rescue operation. A number of officers have just left the scene in the last few minutes, but also here are the family of that missing teenager, Declan Berry. They've shared a photograph of him with us today, and they confirmed that he was driving the car. They said that he had only recently passed his driving test. They also told us that he was taking his friends home when this terrible accident happened on Tuesday evening. They said he was due to join the army in the summer. They have laid some flowers at the scene here today, not only for their son and brother, but also for the girl who sadly has lost her life, whose body was pulled from the water here late yesterday afternoon. Those flowers remain here at the scene. We've also spoken to passers-by here today who have been here with them, who say, one of them told me that he was the first on the scene. He said that 2 of the 3 teenagers that managed to get out of the car actually were in his vehicle trying to keep warm that night as they waited for the emergency services to arrive. He told me that it was quite obvious that they had a lot of water in their stomachs. They were freezing cold and they were very, very wet. He said that also this river is very, very deep. He said that it wouldn't surprise him if the car wasn't now 13 feet below the surface here, and that is obviously having an impact on the police investigation. They need to remove the vehicle from the water, but meanwhile Declan's family are here desperately awaiting further news.
Stacey Foster, thank you. The UK's healthcare systems came close to collapse during the pandemic and coped, but only just. That is according to the chair of the COVID-19 public inquiry, which has published a third report today, exploring the harrowing impact of the pandemic on patients and on NHS staff. John Ray is in central London. John, what exactly did the report find?
Well, this is it, Nina, the latest weighty and highly critical report into the handling of the pandemic. This one is 400 pages long. It's a distillation of 300,000 pages of evidence and the harrowing testimony of many of those who worked at the sharp end during what was surely the bleakest crisis in this country's modern history. The conclusion is alarming, that the NHS just about survived, and only because of the heroic work of staff within the NHS. Here's what the report's author said a few moments ago.
The healthcare systems came close to collapse. Healthcare workers carried the burden of caring for the sick and dying in unprecedented numbers. It came at a huge cost to them, to their families, to their patients, and to the loved ones of patients. It also came at a huge cost to the non-COVID patients who were not seen and treated.
Now, the report is critical of individuals, including the then Health Secretary Matt Hancock, who always denied that the NHS was overwhelmed during the crisis. This report says the NHS came into it ill-prepared, overstretched. There were too few beds, there were too many vacancies amongst staff, and at the start at least there was really inadequate stock of personal protective equipment, which meant that NHS workers were putting their lives on the line treating patients. Many, of course, themselves succumbed to the disease with tragic consequences. This is a testimony of one such widow of a nurse.
I asked to see Patrick and I was donned in PPE. At that time I thought, I've got more protection than Patrick had. Patrick was then extubated and passed away in my presence.
Now, crucially, this report says the NHS really does have to expand its ability to cope with a sudden surge of demand, so we're ready for the next pandemic. And that, by the way, is a when, not an if.
John, Ray, thank you. And finally, a 2,700-mile coastal path, nearly 2 decades in the making, has been officially launched today by the King. James Goodison went to look.
This is the stunning Seven Sisters. What an absolutely iconic view, a key part of British geography, and today now part of a new nature reserve. To mark that and a new coastal path all around England, His Majesty King Charles was here today and walked 2 kilometres of the path that will bear his name. He did so with Natural England and his friend Tony Juniper.
His Majesty has been a leader and a champion on connecting people with a healthy natural environment literally for decades. He knows better than anyone that if we are going to achieve this incredibly important job of finding an accommodation between people's needs and the needs of nature, we have to connect people with the natural world. And this National Nature Reserve and the Coast Path will do that in a very significant way.
People might be surprised, why wasn't this a natural reserve already? In reality, this land was looked after by different groups and organisations. It's now been combined into one. It's about the size of 2,000 football pitches. The walk itself, all around the coast of England, well, experts are saying it might take you a year to do, so a word of warning before you try that.
Lucrezia's here at 6:30 from me. Bye-bye.